It's all about finding something you want more than the current comforts of your situation. For a long time, I was stuck in what I like to call the comfort trap. I was caught up in the ease and enjoyment of my current habits, playing video games for hours on end, watching YouTube videos late into the night, scrolling through social media mindlessly. And I knew that deep down, I should probably make a change, but the thought of losing that fun, that comfort, held me back. And what I didn't realize was my brain was wired to calculate the cost and benefit of anything I did. And so the immediate pleasures that I was having made it so hard for my brain to want to choose something different or find the motivation to start. And it constantly kept thinking, why should I give up something I enjoy for something in the future that I can't even imagine? I feel like this is a trap we all can get caught in. We get so comfortable in our daily routines, even if they're not serving us, that the idea of changing them becomes overwhelming. We rationalize, we make excuses, we convince ourselves that we're not ready. Deep down, there's that part of ourselves that knows we're capable for more. And there was one moment where that really hit home for me. I was playing League of Legends, and something that I've put in hundreds, if not thousands of hours into before. And I just couldn't seem to stop. As the hours went by, I kept having this nagging feeling that I was wasting my life. Couldn't pull myself away. The comfort of the familiar was just too strong. So I tried to force myself to change. I told myself I should be exercising regularly. I told myself I should be eating a balanced diet. I told myself that I should be pursuing something more meaningful. But more often than not, those shoulds never came from me, but they came from external influences, whether that was my parents, social media, or all these ads that I was seeing. And when I tried to discipline myself on those external motivations, never stuck. I would make a little bit of progress here and then eventually burn out and completely start at the very beginning again. I find myself going back to my comfortable old habits, and it took me a long time to understand what was happening. I thought that there was something wrong with me. I simply just lacked the willpower or motivation that my parents always had. But the truth is, you can't create sustaining change when it comes from external influences. And I even just think about the time that I tried going to the gym in that season where I felt like I should just be going to the gym. I never thought to myself why it was important. And for a few weeks, I was the golden child of discipline for going to the gym. It all was external. And I went not because I understood why it was important, but just because everyone told me that's how you become disciplined. You go to the gym. And a few weeks of that, you ultimately just land back at square one, because the moment you come up against some adversity with a new habit that you're trying to start, you completely break down because you don't have a strong why. That's when I learned a concept about discipline that changed my life, which is finding a competing interest. That's when you find something that you want more than the comfort of your current habits. It's about finding that internal motivation that is strong enough to outweigh the pull of any immediate gratification that you have at your fingertips. I started to think about the people who have overcome serious addictions, and they didn't do it because someone told them they should. They did it because they found a reason to change that was more compelling than the pull of their addiction. Maybe it was for their health, their family, or a newfound sense of purpose. Whatever it was an interest that competed with, ultimately outweighed that addiction that they've struggled with for so long. And so I realized I needed to do the same thing. I needed to find my competing interests that was more important to me than my current comforts. But that was easier said than done. I had been so influenced by the external that I lost touch with what I felt like I even truly wanted. And so I started a process of self-discovery, which was very millennial of me. And I began to question everything I thought I knew about myself and what I actually wanted. I started journaling, meditating, and really listening to my inner voice. It was uncomfortable at times, but it was necessary. I remember one journaling session in particular where I was writing about the ideal life I would want to live if I didn't have any limitations, I started to notice a pattern. That ideal life was one where I was always learning, growing, pushing myself out of my comfort zone. I realized that deep down, I had a profound sense of just wanting to grow and becoming the best version of myself, whatever that meant. To find my competing interest, I started by asking myself, what do I really want? Not what society tells me I want, not what my parents want for me, not what advertisers are trying to sell me, but what do I, in my hearts of hearts, really desire? And at first I wasn't so sure. That was a sign that everything external had clouded my judgment for so long that whatever was inside was unrecognizable. But that was okay because I realized it was a starting point. And so as I dug deeper, I asked myself, do I want to change? And the answer was no. The comfort of my current life was still too appealing. And then I asked myself, do I wish I wanted to change? In other words, do I wish I was the kind of person who wanted to pursue discipline, even if I didn't feel that desire right then and there? And when I found myself saying yes to that last question, I knew I had found the beginning. I had identified a core part of myself that wanted something more, even if I wasn't ready to act on it yet. That was such a critical moment for me. It was the first time in a long time that I had felt truly honest with myself. And it was from planting that seed that my discipline finally grew. I was sitting in my room, video game controller in hand, ready to start another 12-hour gaming session. And that's when something stopped me. There was a small voice in my head that asked, is this really what I wanted to be doing with my life? And for the first time, I paused, put the controller down, and really thought about that question. And I realized the answer was no. I didn't want to keep pursuing these temporary pleasures. I wanted something more meaningful, more fulfilling. And once I started to see that this desire for change was coming from the inside and the outside like before, I knew that the next step was to start really small. And it kind of seems ridiculous now that I look back on it. I know I really wanted to get in shape, and so I started with 5 push-ups a day, just 5. I wanted to write in my journal a little bit more, and I just started with 1 sentence a day. I knew I wanted to read more, and I just started with 1 page a day. The whole point of it all is I knew I couldn't transform my life overnight, and I had to build it step by step. Every time I moved forward, my mind resisted. It told me that these tiny steps weren't enough. I needed to go all in or not try enough or not try at all. I knew that if I took on too much too soon, I would burn out and quit. That's why I knew I had to break it up into small, consistent steps just to make things sustainable. I stopped relying on willpower and motivation and started to build real habits into my life that became the new norm. Over time, those small steps compounded and I became unrecognizable to myself. I didn't have to be perfect, but I just wanted to be consistent. And as I started to see progress, even tiny progress, it fueled my motivation. I remember the first time I did my first 5 push-ups, it seemed so small, so pointless. I did it anyway. And the next day, I did it again. Before I knew it, those push-ups had become such a part of my daily routine. They were no longer something I had to force myself to do. They were something that I just simply did without having to think about. And as I look back on what happened after all of those tiny steps compounded together, there was a sense of momentum, pride. I started to really crave that progress, even if it was small. I think that was the start of a positive feedback loop for me. The more I did, the more I wanted to do. The more I saw myself as a disciplined person, the more disciplined I became. But I had to remember that it wasn't easy to get there. And I wasn't trying to reach some perfect Zen end state where I was suddenly David Goggins or the most disciplined person in the world. I was just learning to enjoy the process of what it means to grow, to just really find satisfaction in that daily pursuit. And yes, of course, there were setbacks and days where I feel like I fell short, that was okay, because I really reframed those moments as not failures, but opportunities to recommit. I constantly just reminded myself of my competing interests and moved on. And as I think about, each push-up or each sentence, each step in the right direction, it all came together to create this new identity that I feel. 5 push-ups became 10, 10 became 20. One sentence in my journal became a paragraph, and a paragraph eventually became a word. And the beautiful thing is the discipline that I started to develop affected every other area of my life. I remember one day, maybe like 2 or 3 years ago, didn't even recognize the person staring back at me anymore. Not because I looked different. Well, I kind of did. I was more muscular. Like, let's be honest. My entire demeanor changed. There's a little bit of a glint in my eye that I hadn't seen for a long time. It was someone who knew that they were in control of their own life. That was a really freeing feeling. And for me, this process of discipline has always been a iterative process. It was normal for me to feel like I wasn't ready to change, like I was stuck in the comfort of my own habits. But by digging deep to find true desires, what I really wanted, my perspective started to change. By just focusing on being consistent and not worrying about perfection, I started to bring about a new way of being into the world that I had never experienced. I didn't let my mind play tricks on me and tell me I should stay in the comfort of the situation I was in. I just tried my best to stay focused on what I actually wanted. And looking back now, I'm so proud of how far I've come, but also excited for how much more I have to go. And discipline has allowed me to shape my life according to the values I have and the desires that are actually in me. And that's the crazy paradox about discipline. It's not about forcing yourself to be someone you're not. It's about forcing yourself to be fully who you are. And sometimes we can lose that part of ourselves because of how much we get influenced by everything outside of us. And so I would say, find your competing interests, take that first tiny step, and don't shoot for perfection. Just shoot for consistency. You're so much more capable than you realize. And sometimes we just have to remind ourselves of that.